Hello everyone, and welcome to this virtual open day for the Distance Learning Masters in Refugee Protection and Forced Migration Studies at the University of London. This event is being recorded, so if you would prefer not to be included in this recorded session, please leave now. The Masters in Refugee Protection is the longest running and largest postgraduate programme in the refugee field delivered entirely online. It's taught by the Refugee Law Initiative at the University of London, and it's delivered through the prestigious University of London Worldwide. I'm Dr. Sarah Singer, Programme Director, and along with Professor David Cantor, Director of the Refugee Law Initiative, I'm very pleased to welcome you to this online event. This event is an opportunity for you to learn more about studying on the MA in Refugee Protection, and it also serves to launch our new specialist module on disasters, climate change and displacement. It's furthermore an opportunity for you to ask us any questions that you might have about the programme, its format, its structure, or what studying via distance learning is like. So please do post any questions that you might have using the chat box functionality, and Professor Cantor and I will respond to as many as we can. We would like to start by introducing you to the MA programme and to our new specialist module, and of course our work at the Refugee Law Initiative. Please do post your messages and questions in the chat box as the event progresses, and I look forward to responding to many of them during the second half of this event. So the Distance Learning Masters in Refugee Protection and Forced Migration Studies is the longest running and largest postgraduate programme in the refugee field delivered entirely online. This award-winning MA programme is unique in that it's the first ever postgraduate course on refugees to be offered via distance learning. And this means that you can get a University of London degree from anywhere in the world. Run by the University of London's Refugee Law Initiative, one of the leading research institutions working in this field, the programme currently has around 350 students studying in over 70 countries all over the world. Many of our students are working directly in the refugee and humanitarian field while they study, while others are working in different and related areas and seeking to pursue careers in the refugee, human rights, or humanitarian fields. In 2019, the Masters in Refugee Protection was awarded the prestigious Roger Mills Prize for Innovation in Distance Learning and Teaching, specifically for our work supporting students from diverse educational backgrounds. The programme is delivered entirely online via distance learning, and it's part-time, and as such it's been specifically designed so that you can study from anywhere in the world while continuing to work. It also provides unique opportunities for you to directly apply your learning to your everyday work and engage with and learn from other students who are based in different contexts across the globe. At the same time, one of the real strengths of the programme is that all components of the programme are delivered by experts in the field who are drawn from around the world. The distance learning format means we're able to draw on the Refugee Law Initiative's extensive network of leading specialists in the field who run modules in their areas of expertise. And as such, we're able to bring together tutors from all over the globe and provide a level of specialisation which simply wouldn't be possible for an on-campus programme. So how is the programme structured? Well, the Masters in Refugee Protection aims to provide students with a solid understanding of law, policy, and theoretical approaches in the refugee and forced migration field, and to develop your critical and analytical skills, enabling you to build transferable skills which can be used for future research progression or employment. Our teaching at the Refugee Law Initiative is grounded in an interdisciplinary approach that combines the perspectives of law, policy, and social sciences. On the programme, firstly, you'll study 2 core modules, which will provide you, regardless of whether you have a legal background or not, with a firm understanding of the fundamentals of international law in relation to the protection of refugees and human rights, and a sound interdisciplinary understanding of the field of forced migration studies and its key debates. After the 2 core modules, you can choose 4 elective modules from a wide range of topics. And here you can gain in-depth knowledge of a particular geographical region, such as Europe or Africa and Latin America, or thematic issue. For example, internal displacement, climate change and disasters, statelessness, gender and sexual orientation, or healthcare. The innovative module Securing Refugee Protection in Practice includes unique practice-focused content, which is designed to build your understanding of the work of a range of agencies involved in protecting refugees and displaced persons, and to help you develop transferable practical skills, such as advocacy and fundraising, that are important in working for such agencies. An exciting new complement to our range of modules on offer is a brand new module on disasters, climate change, and displacement launching this year. And this module reflects critically on the ways in which environmental factors, such as disasters, climate change, and environmental degradation shape displacement experiences and policies. Professor Cantor will be speaking more about environmental displacement and our new module shortly. So alongside these core and elective modules, the programme also has a strong focus on developing students' research skills. And this is through the dissertation component of the programme, in which you would develop your own piece of research on a topic of your choice in the refugee field. To support this component of the programme, you are provided rigorous training in research methods through our Researching Refugees course, and receive dedicated support throughout your dissertation research and writing via an individually assigned dissertation supervisor. And this is really where we see the culmination of knowledge, analytical skills, and the personal engagement of students come through. And we've had some fabulous pieces of research drawing on the breadth of student experience and connections made as part of the MA programme, which some have gone on to publish in academic journals, in our working papers series, or in online blogs and comment pieces. So how does learning work in the online format? Well, firstly, as mentioned, the part-time and distance learning format of the programme means you're able to study from anywhere in the world while you are working, and you're not left alone in doing so. For each module on the programme, you'll be part of a small tutor group led by a specialist module tutor. And during your studies, you'll interact with your module tutors and your fellow students via online discussion forums. So not only do you get the benefit of the expertise of our international network of tutors, but you also get perspectives from students around the world. Our current students are from a wide range of professional backgrounds, and they're located in countries as diverse as Bangladesh, Australia, Sudan, the Netherlands, and Uganda. And many are working directly in the field as they study, as practitioners or legal officers, government officials, and humanitarian workers. And as you can imagine, this makes for a really interesting cohort of students, and we find that our students often learn a lot from one another. As well as the online forums, there are online activities that you will complete and receive feedback on throughout each module to help develop your skills and knowledge in preparation for each module's final assignment, which is a piece of coursework submitted online. You'll also be provided with comprehensive study guides for each module, scanned readings from a range of textbooks, journals, and monographs, and access to a fully searchable University of London online library with a huge stock of journals and primary source materials. Now, one of the innovations of the MA in Refugee Protection is the level of support that we offer to students while studying. So in addition to your module tutors, with whom you'll have regular contact throughout each module, we also have dedicated student support officers who are there to help guide you and provide advice during your time studying on the programme. And for the dissertation component, you'll also be allocated an individual dissertation supervisor. We also have a comprehensive range of study skills resources available to students, and we provide careers advice and guidance and live webinars with myself as Programme Director, with tutors, students and alumni of the programme. And this is complemented by our online student community platforms, which allows students to connect, to share ideas and contribute to debates and develop networks that will persist far beyond their time studying on the programme. Studying on the MA in Refugee Protection not only gives you access to the programme's learning materials, but it also means you'll be part of the Refugee Law Initiative's global network of researchers and practitioners in the refugee and forced migration field. As part of the Refugee Law Initiative's community, you'll have access to our myriad of events, activities, podcasts, and research resources. Many of our students have presented their research at our annual conference and at other academic events hosted by the Refugee Law Initiative, which is an amazing opportunity to network with senior academics and to promote your research to a broader audience. There are also publication opportunities via the Refugee Law Initiative's Working Papers series and online blog, and dissemination and research activities via our online platforms and our newsletter, which reaches thousands. The programme has developed a truly global network of students in the forced migration field, which spans over 70 countries and includes those working for international organisations and agencies such as the UN Refugee Agency, the UN Development Programme, and the Red Cross, government ministries in Europe, North America, Africa, and the Middle East, and international and local NGOs such as Save the Children, MSF, the Norwegian Refugee Council, and other civil society groups. And the knowledge exchange and connections formed through this network have enhanced the research promotion of students and helped us to facilitate career development opportunities as well. So why study a Master's in Refugee Protection? Well, firstly, the refugee phenomenon is one of the most complex, compelling, and arguably misunderstood features of the 21st century. It's rarely far from the news headlines in countries all across the globe. Undertaking postgraduate study in this area will build your knowledge and skills in a way which will allow you to contribute to informed debate and real action in this sometimes overly politicized and polarizing area. And we've seen students use the skills and knowledge that they've developed on the programme to progress their careers. For example, securing senior roles at the UN Refugee Agency, at government ministers, or obtaining positions as researchers in academic institutions. In this programme, you will be placed at the centre of the learning experience through engagement with a range of robust and challenging materials, activities and assessments, and online peer engagement with academic support as you learn more about one of the most challenging and complex of contemporary phenomena today. And all this makes for a very stimulating and engaging programme and research network. So I look forward to answering any questions that you might have about studying on the programme. But before doing so, please let me hand over to Professor David Cantor, Director of the Refugee Law Initiative, who will be speaking in more detail about the Refugee Law Initiative itself and our new module on disasters, climate change and displacement.
Many thanks, Dr. Singer, and lovely to see you all here today. For those who don't know me, my name is Professor David Cantor. I'm the Director of the Refugee Law Initiative, which runs the MA in Refugee Protection overall. I've been invited to say a little bit about the module on disasters, climate change and displacement. And part of the reason for that is, although I've been researching and working on refugee issues for the last 20 years, over the last 7 to 8 years, a good amount of my research focus has been on displacement in the context of climate change and disasters, thinking through how those dynamics play out and how we might respond to them in practice, and in fact, helping governments to develop frameworks for doing so. The new module, Disasters, Climate Change and Displacement, speaks directly to these kinds of themes and offers a solid critical understanding of different forms of human mobility in the context of natural hazards, things that you might regularly see on the news: storm surges, increasing temperatures, earthquakes, volcanoes. And the reason why we've decided to develop this new elective module is in part a recognition that a good amount of the programme focuses very strongly on refugees and displacement related to conflict and violence-driven movements, but that actually, although there were a number of parts of the programme which previously addressed displacement related to disasters and climate change, actually the topic is one of such fundamental importance that it really did deserve being brought together in its own dedicated elective specialist module. I suspect I don't need to convince any of the people on this call about the importance of thinking about climate change, of responding to disasters caused by natural hazards, but it might surprise you to learn about the scale of displacement that these kind of phenomena produce. Over the last 10 years or so, if you look at the figures for the numbers of people who've been displaced, whether across a border or within their own countries, you can see that about 5 times the number of those who've been displaced by conflict and violence have been displaced by disasters linked to natural hazards and climate change. In other words, disasters, natural hazards, climate change are big drivers of displacement, and they shape the wider patterns of mobility and migration in all sorts of very, very important ways. And this, of course, has raised a number of questions, particularly over the last 10 years or so, about how do we as societies, as countries, as individuals, respond to these very challenging dynamics of displacement linked to disasters. Part of the challenge, of course, is that it seems that many disasters are becoming more intense and frequent in their nature due to the impact of climate change. So we're looking not just at a problem of today, where there are many tens of millions of people around the world who are displaced by these phenomena, but something that may, in fact, be even more intense as we look towards the future. And for this reason, a really solid module that gives you a robust critical understanding of these different forms of movement and how you respond to them seemed to us a very appropriate way of developing the master's programme further. Speaking very briefly about the syllabus was developed jointly by programme staff, including myself, and a colleague of ours, Sanjula Weera Singh, who leads the module. She is, of course, a leading expert in this area too, and she's joined by a number of colleagues who are tutoring on the module. What does the new module cover? Well, first of all, it gives you an understanding of how natural hazards and climate change drive displacement and shape mobility as a fundamental starting point. Then we move on to look at the responses, the legal and policy responses to that. First of all, from the cross-border perspective. So when people cross a border as a result of disasters, what sort of protection or migration frameworks might help them out? And we look here at a range of different possibilities: refugee law, migration law, human rights law, etc. But of course, the vast majority of people who displace as a result of disasters are displaced within their own country. And here we look very centrally at the question of what those dynamics look like and how governments can respond to them through disaster relief laws, through internal displacement policy, and so on. Finally, at the global level, we start to look at the emerging framework that one can see, a patchwork, if you like, that's being built up of global governance about how to respond to this challenge of disaster-related displacement. And you can see the great importance which has been attached to this in a range of different fora. But most recently, I'd just like to point your attention to the Biden administration's executive order, which is looking at climate change and its impact on migration, on forced migration, on displacement. So clearly a very cutting-edge contemporary issue in many societies, not just in the US, but also at the global level. Like all of the other modules, the content of the module and the way that you learn is very interactive. It's a very iterative learning process. You're engaged in discussions, not only with your tutors, but also with peers, learning from those who are placed in a range of contexts all around the world. So you'll be looking at new concepts, of course, and learning about them, but you'll also be building your networks, as well as thinking through in the form of exercises, assessments, how practically you might apply the protection frameworks to these kinds of situations and what kind of solutions we should be thinking about to disaster-related displacement. All of this, of course, connects very closely with the work that's done at the Refugee Law Initiative, especially with partners such as the Platform on Disaster Displacement, the UN Refugee Agency, the International Organization on Migration, and so on. And my colleague, Dr. Singer, has talked a little bit about how students have been very involved in a whole range of research, networks, publishing, and other projects at the RLI. And of course, that's something we're very keen to continue. So I hope that gives you a flavor of what the new module is all about. And I'd be delighted to answer any questions you might have about the module itself, or about more broadly how the MA programme fits within the broader research structure of this leading centre on refugee protection that we run here at the University of London, the Refugee Law Initiative. So back to you, Dr. Singer.
Thank you very much, David. We've had some questions come through in the chat box. We've had some questions about fees and funding, which I'll respond to shortly. And we've also had some questions about eligibility for studying on the programme. And David, perhaps you wouldn't mind responding to that as well. So on fees and funding, the fee structure and programme fees are all available on the website for our MA programme. We've posted the link for that in the chat box. There is the option to pay the full course fees up front, or we also have a modular fee paying structure in place. And that effectively means that you can pay for each module as you study it to make your progress and funding on the programme more manageable as you progress through the programme. We've also had a question about if we have available scholarships. We have 2 scholarships available for this academic year. One of them, the Hannah Arendt Scholarship, is a full scholarship which is directed towards people who are based in a range of African countries. And we also have the B.S. Chimney Scholarship, which is again a full scholarship, and that's directed towards people based in countries in South Asia and Southeast Asia. Details of those are available on the MA website, so please do have a look at those if you think you would be eligible. If you are UK based, we also have a bursary available for UK's people who are from backgrounds underrepresented in academia. So please do have a look on our website if you are interested in any of those. Another thing I would like to highlight is the application deadline for the programme. The application deadline is the 1st of September, but if you are interested in applying for one of our scholarships, we would strongly recommend that you submit your application by the 1st of August so that your application can be considered and progress, and you can apply for a scholarship in good time before the scholarship deadline. I'll hand over to you now, David, to speak about eligibility.
Many thanks, Sarah. So in terms of eligibility, it's a very straightforward application process. And the first thing I should say is that unlike most other universities, including some of those who run their programs through the University of London, we don't charge an application fee up front. So it's a program where you are not charged for applying. In terms of eligibility itself, you will need to put forward, obviously, evidence of your previous studies. Those are things like degree certificates and transcripts. Similarly, you'll need to satisfy either that your mother tongue is English or that you have the requisite standard of fluency in English as certified by working in that language or by language tests and so on. And all of those criteria are set out on the website. The other things that we look for are a pair of references, and usually we like one of those references to be from an academic. So somebody who's taught you previously at university or some similar research institution, so that they can give their opinion on your suitability for a postgraduate study program that is, I think, quite robust and rigorous. Of course, we're also pleased to hear from non-academics by way of references who can give evidence as to your broader work within the field and your suitability as a colleague. And those are also things that we do take into account. Last of all, we're very keen that applicants write a statement. And we like to place a good deal of weight on the statement because we have a large number of applications, and working out who really is motivated to study, whether that's because you've been working in the area previously, perhaps you have a refugee or displacement background yourself, or it's an area that you're keen to move into. Really, the personal statement is an incredibly important part of the application, and it's certainly worth spending a good bit of time on that. In terms of the formal criteria themselves, we look for usually the equivalent of a UK upper second degree in a relevant subject area, along with evidence of fluency in English. So the materials that you put in for the application, they're all going towards trying to show how you meet those criteria, why you're keen on the program, why you would be a good student for us to take on. I suppose the last thing to say just about eligibility is, even if you don't quite meet the eligibility criteria, for example, you may be in a country where the level of the undergraduate degrees isn't considered quite equivalent to those that are awarded by UK universities, we do still look very seriously at each individual application. And if you can show us that you have the skills that would allow you to do well on a postgraduate program like this one, that you've got an appropriate background that demonstrates your interest in the field, then we certainly look at each application on its own merits, even sometimes making offers to those who don't meet the formal 2-1 in a relevant degree area. So I hope that tells you a little bit about eligibility. I can see that there's a range of other questions coming in, so perhaps I'll hand back to you, Sarah, and you tell me which you'd like me to take and which you're going to take yourself.
Thank you very much, David. So we've had a couple of further questions come through about studying via distance learning. So specifically, is there a visa required? There's no visa required because the course is delivered entirely online. So there is no travel component or travel required as part of studying on the programme. We've also had a question come through about assessments and whether there are SAT examinations or not. There are no SAT examinations on the programme. All the assessments are done entirely online via submission of online activities or an online piece of coursework, or indeed the online submission of your final dissertation that comes through. So there is no examination component included there. We've also had further question about the dissertation itself and how that works, how long it takes and where that sits within the programme. Well, we've actually designed the dissertation component to span across the whole course of your studies on the programme. If you were to study the programme within the minimum 2-year structure, then we would suggest that alongside the study of your core modules, you study the Researching Refugees Research Methods course and develop your research proposal in your first year of study. And then in your second year of study, you'd have the opportunity to then take that further into a full dissertation with an individually assigned dissertation supervisor who would help guide you through that process of research and writing. If you prefer, you can study the programme over a longer period. You can study the programme in up to 5 years. So you can take a bit longer and study maybe 1 module or 2 module years rather than the maximum amount. And if you would prefer to equally spend a bit more time in your dissertation, that is also open to you as well. So that's some further points on the dissertation there. David, I see that we've had, following on from your comments on eligibility and admissions, a question about Is there a waiver on English language requirements if the course of study originally or previously has been in English in India? Would you like to respond to that question?
Good. Well, thanks very much for the question. I can see that there are a couple of questions about previous studies. So to the first of those questions, yes, of course, if you've done a university degree previously in English, that would be very good evidence of English fluency. So certainly you would want to include that with your application and just point that out perhaps in the covering statement. We've also had a question about are students prejudiced if they've done previous postgraduate study or a PhD? And I should say that the question is absolutely, the answer to that is absolutely not. We've had a number of students, some even who've obtained their PhDs previously, but wish to go into this particular area or see that this program offers particular skills that they weren't able to build up in the PhD program. And they have been admitted and successfully completed the program. In fact, one of the MA dissertation students who I'm supervising at the moment has a PhD in a related area previously. So that's certainly no bar. I mean, it clearly shows that you're capable of doing postgraduate study. So if anything, it is a benefit when you make your application. Of course, you'd want to look very carefully at the program and make sure that the program that we're offering does give you additional to what you've got with your previous studies. I'm very clear that, if you've done one master's degree, then you should think very carefully about doing a second master's degree and, look very carefully at the course content and what you get out of it to make sure that it really is taking you where you need to go in terms of career paths. There is another question, and Sarah, you may want to come on to this as well, because I know you know a number of the students rather better than I do, being the program director. But in terms of the career paths, I mean, certainly a lot of students are doing this for career-related reasons, either to move into the field or to move sideways within the field, say from the humanitarian area to the refugee area, or from development into refugee issues, or even from refugee humanitarian issues to refugee development issues. So there are a range of career pathways that the program can open up. Quite often our students are looking at posts that require a postgraduate qualification as part of the entry eligibility. And of course, this program is a very prestigious and well-known program within the field. It is run by the University of London, and the students that we've produced, I think, are absolutely brilliant ambassadors for the quality of the program itself and the quality of the student cohort that is part of that. So there are, I think, a range of career paths that open up. Some of our students go into academia as well. They end up teaching in universities, or they end up in research institutions or researching in universities, or they end up going to PhDs. So there are a very wide range of career paths that this program can open up. But I think, one needs to be clear about where you want to go, look very carefully at the program content and check that that is going to take you exactly where you want to go. And of course, if you've got questions, both Sarah and myself are always there at the end of an email if you've got something specific that you think we might be able to help you with. Sarah.
Thank you very much, David. We've had some further questions come through on applications and eligibility for the programme, and on funding as well. So one question asks if they previously applied and been accepted to study on the programme but were unable to take up the place then, would they still be able to take up a place this coming year? And the short answer to that is yes. You would simply need to contact the University of London to ask for a renewal of your offer of study on the programme, and then you would be eligible to start the programme this academic year. We've also had some questions come through about the scholarships, how many places there might be. And as I mentioned, we have 2 full scholarships available this year. One is the BS Chimney Scholarship and one is the Hannah Arendt Scholarship. And those are directed towards potential students from a range of countries. We haven't been able to include every country in the globe within the scope of those scholarships, but they have been designed to target different countries to scholarships which we offered in previous years. And there is one scholarship available for each of those schemes. I would also highlight that if any of you are working for or affiliated with organisations such as the UN Refugee Agency or the Norwegian Refugee Council, we have organisational partnerships with those agencies, and there is a bursary available for staff from those organisations. We've also had a question come through about how to start your application and how to start applying for a scholarship. The full details of how to apply to the MA programme are available on the MA webpage. There is a button which says apply to the programme. So if you follow that through, you will get full details on how to begin your application. As mentioned, if you would like to apply for a scholarship, we would suggest submitting your application by the 1st of August so that it can be considered in advance of the scholarship application deadline itself. We had a question also on how many students apply to the programme each year or commence the programme each year, and if there's a limit on that. We don't have a specific limit, but we tend to welcome around 100 new students onto the programme each year. It's a really fantastic community and network of students from across the globe, which we're incredibly proud of.
Many thanks. I see there's just a couple more questions about applications. So first of all, if you have studied in English previously, usually that's good evidence, but clearly you'd want to just double check that with the admissions tutors. In other words, when you put your application in, if you just highlight what your background in English is, then they will take a view on whether that is sufficient. If you've done all of your schooling in English, then that's likely to be accepted, I would imagine. If you can't get hold of your final degree certificate because of COVID, but you've got your transcripts, then certainly you should send those in. We do need, of course, official verification of any claims of previous studies, but transcripts or a note from your university where you've been doing your studies is equally acceptable if your actual degree certificate is not yet available. So I hope that answers the few remain. Oh, there was, I think, one final question from very, very early on that perhaps I skipped out, which was about dissertations and how long do they take. So the dissertation module, you start off actually very, very early on doing a research methods course. And that research methods course runs in 2 blocks of 4 weeks between other parts of the program. And so you're taught directly on research methods relating to refugees and displacement. And at the end of that, you write up a research proposal. Now that research proposal is usually going to be the basis for your dissertation, but you get feedback at the end of this research methods course on, if you like, this kind of dissertation proposal, if you like, and then you start your dissertation. So you go into your dissertation already having thought about it a great deal previously. In terms of the actual writing of the dissertation, well, that commences when you get allocated your individual dissertation supervisor, who's an expert on the area that you're working on. And usually it is about 6 or 7 months that you have to write your dissertation. So in 2 study sessions specifically allocated for dissertation research. I should say that the dissertations are, in my view, one of the strongest outputs of the program. There's some fantastic research done by students across the board and across the world, in fact. Many of our students are working, as Dr. Singer mentioned, on the ground, be it in the UK, in Syria, in Colombia, in South Sudan, wherever it might be. And the kind of primary research that's done, particularly before COVID, but even since COVID, some absolutely spectacular pieces of work coming out of that, and quite a lot of them end up being published. So I hope that gives a good indication of the dissertation.
Thank you very much, David. We've had one further question come through about the period of study and whether it's possible to take breaks during your studies on the programme. And the short answer to that is yes. The programme has specifically been designed to be flexible so that you can study within this 2 to 5 year period. And many of our students take breaks if life gets in the way. So it's very much designed to be flexible to fit around you. Right. So I think those were the main questions that were posed today. Thank you to everyone who has attended this session. I've enjoyed responding to many of your questions. As I mentioned, all the key information about applying to the programme and on funding is available on the MA in Refugee Protection webpage. So please do visit that as a key source of information on applications and funding. Equally, you are very welcome to email me directly if you have any further specific questions about studying on the programme, and I'd be very happy to respond to any questions that you might have. So on behalf of David and myself, thank you everyone for joining this online event and learning more about the MA programme. I hope you found it interesting. Please visit our webpage, send us an email. We look forward to hearing from you.